think I've got a plan. I think I'm going to take that orange and do a swoosh like this. And there's going to be a couple of places where my space is really small, but I think by the time I get up there, there's not going to be much left of that drag. So it should be okay. But let's give it a try and see what happens. So I'm going to move on to this peach color. Hoping I can show this to you so you can see it a little bit easier. How does it look when we go from it's kind of messy. I'm gonna rethink that. All right, let's try it a different way. Still not wild about it. I think I have two problems. One, I really don't like this color next to this color, and I think it's because it's too, like it's not, I don't know, it's not gradient enough. So I'm gonna take some of the pink from this one. I just want a little bit more gradual transition. Gonna mix that up, see if that helps me. And then I think the other problem was I was using a tool that was probably, I don't know, like it was just a little bit too big for that space. So I'm gonna move it a size back down and move down a tool size. We'll see what happens. It's better, but I still don't love it. All right, I'm going to try it with the 1mm tool and see how I like that. So this is going to be a hopefully pretty skinny line. Okay, I can live with that. And sometimes these are tricky, knowing where to start this line that's right next to it. So I try to envision like a straight line out from the one before it, or I guess a diagonal. Because sometimes I was starting them and they'd start down here and sometimes too far up. So if I can kind of, you know, have that orientated that way, that helps me. Okay, I've got my little block out here that I got from a very nice seller in Canada. So these can be a tricky too, because again, I was trying to make the line this way for how these started. So now I got to flip my brain and turn it this way. I just always had such a hard time keeping these the same on both sides. So if you are too, it could help you. And I'm kind of warming up to this coral now that I've got a little bit more of it on here. Sometimes like a brighter color kind of is an assault on my eyes, which is why I don't like painting with white. I think these are going to fit together some pretty nice. There's a couple that are going to be, you know, too close and it'll kind of look janky, but whatever. It's fine. I think I have my next course of action ready to go. I'm going to take a petal tool from Picky Tie. I think that's how she says it in Canada. And I'm going to put a petal right here. And I'm going to do it in this lightest color, this kind of peachy orange, because I want to get all of the colors on the stone so I can see what I'm working with. And then I think I can go back up here and fill more things in these little spaces, but for the big spaces, now I know where I am color-wise. And usually when I'm doing a regular stone, and I'm doing the center where the candle holder is here, I can usually get all the colors on kind of in that first part of the project. And that really helps me how I want to see the colors together. This is a little bit easier because it's kind of a gradient. So it's less challenging. If you have like, a 6-color palette that is 6 completely different colors, trying to get those all on the same stone in a way that's pleasing to the eye can be a challenge. And I'm just going back and just dotting a little bit more paint on some of these so they flatten out nicely. I like that. I was kind of worried about this yellowy orange going in there, but I like the way it's all coming together, so I feel better about it. And now that I see that, I'm gonna maybe kind of work my way back and start top dotting and kind of blending all these colors in together. And hopefully that'll just make it look even cooler. My next step is I'm going to go over this top dot. I'm going to top dot over this pink. And this original dot was a 10 millimeter, so I'm going to use an 8 and see how that looks. And I'm going to go in with that kind of coral color. That's a little bigger than I want it to be, so I'm going to clean that up. All right, I've got that cleaned up. I'm going to try a 7. See how that looks. I want plenty of that pink showing through. And that's a little better. Gonna go in with a tool and flatten that guy out. Yeah, I think I like that. So I'm gonna just go around and do all of these. And remember, we're gonna try to avoid that paint mounding. And the way I do that is I don't press too hard. So I'm just barely touching the stone. I'm not even really touching it with the paint, with the tool. I'm really just touching it with the paint. And then I'm kind of swirling out with that dotting rod to distribute that paint nicely. And then finally I'm gonna go in with that stylus and just smooth that paint out. And then I've got a couple of bubbles. So I'll just go in with a pokey stabby tool and do that. Next up, I'm going to do something in these kind of leaf shaped spaces. And I think I want to do a couple of things. So like, one main element and then like some little something else. So I'm going to take a 4 millimeter rod and I'm going to put this just below center vertically. I think I need a little bit more paint. And then I'm going to take a 1/2 millimeter tool and just drag this into a teardrop. And I could use a teardrop tool for this, but I'm not going to do that for a couple of reasons. For one reason, it's not going to give me a super crisp point or lines that I've dragged. This will just be a little bit crisper. And the other reason is if I use that tool, I would definitely have to work up here while I'm holding the stone, and my back hurts from holding this damn thing, so tough bounce. An easy way to do that is just take your first one on with a clean tool and drag it down to the point where you want it to go. And then just kind of bow that out to get the shape that you want. And you can also use a pokey stabby tool to do this. That would make a really, really nice sharp point. But since we're doing it on a layer of paint, it just doesn't, it kind of, I don't know, it's just not quite as nice. It like kind of gets stuck in that lower layer of paint and it's kind of a bummer. So I'm just going to do it this way. And I'm really needing to go back and do a second dot to have enough paint to drag that down. Let me show you a close-up of this. If I do this with a pokey stabby tool, it kind of gets hung up on that. Because I've got a couple, besides the magenta or whatever, I've got 2 layers of black paint. So it's really starting to kind of gum up. See if you can tell the difference on camera. This is pokey stabby. Yeah, just a much finer point when you do that. If you have trouble making teardrops this way, you're not alone. I usually, if you can keep these lines straight, you'll have a better chance of getting it accurate every time. My next move is I'm going to put a pink on top, a pink triangle-y thing, I don't know, on top of the magenta one. So I've got a slightly smaller oval dotting tool. And I just want to see a little bit of that magenta coming out. And then I'm going to take pokey stabby. And this is going to be the same color as these dots that I walked. Some nail polish arrived from Amazon during this recording, and I was stopped to swatch out my new colors that I got. I do my own nails, and I have been for about 10 years. And I think that really helps me when I started dot painting, because there's just so much to the consistency that's important. Not only when you're a nail tech, but just if you're doing your own nails. I started experimenting with builder gel in a bottle, and I've been pretty impressed that my nails are this long and aren't breaking. But that's all, consistency is very important, because you have to use gravity to get the product where you want it to go. So if you're a nail tech, you'd probably be a really good dot painter. I'm really happy with how this is going. You can see that this is what I just completed, and it's like a really subtle gradient from those colors, and I really like that, which when you look at the palette, you're kind of like, oh, they're all the same color. But then once you get it on there and get them next to each other, you can see that it isn't. So that's pretty exciting. But next, what I want to do is I want to try a different gold, because I'm just not wild about how that first one went down. So I've got some Arteza gold here that I'm going to see how it looks right on that purple. And this is a heavier body paint that I've thinned down. I think I like that. I was worried I wouldn't like it next to the other gold, but worst case scenario, I can just dot over them. Okay, now I'm gonna pull some of this magenta onto the purple. So I've got a 3mm tool, and I'm just gonna do a dot, because I'm not 100% thrilled with those little swipes, but I'm dealing with it. And I'm doing these offset, not dead center. I almost always like that better than dead center, but not always. All right, I'm gonna top dot these teardrops now. And I'm gonna use a 6mm petal or teardrop or whatever. I'm gonna go back in my pink. We're gonna try it this way. I might have better results if I paint from 12 o'clock, but I'm not sure, so let's see. That is a bit trickier. It's very hard to orient the point on this, so I think I'm gonna do this from 6 o'clock. Penny. My dog is barking because another dog is barking a block away. Back to gel nail polish. Gel nail polish and acrylic nails and gel nails are actually all acrylic. They just dry differently. So this acrylic paint dries from evaporation. So as the water evaporates, which happens pretty quickly with this paint. But gel polish is also acrylic, but it won't dry without a UV light. So you could leave it sitting out in a dark room for an infinite period of time. And I suppose it would maybe evaporate a little bit and make it really gummy, but it would never really dry because it can't dry without UV light. So the difference between working with that sort of acrylic and an acrylic that evaporates is that you have a lot more time to work with the product and move it around when it has to be cured by a light, because no matter what you do, it won't dry and stop moving. Whereas this, as soon as you open your paint container, it's starting to evaporate. That's why I always keep my paint cups closed, because I don't want my paint to dry. That is looking pretty rad. All right, see what's next. Next up, I'm gonna try to bring a little bit of the purple. As I'm sure you figured out, I'm trying to kind of bring the orange up, bring the purple down, and kind of mix everything in the middle. So I don't want to lose too much purple. I'm going to put a tiny, tiny little bit on here using the common end of where my stylus is. Styli, whatever. And I'm just doing a really kind of brief swipe. And I definitely like the second gold much better than the first. I don't know if I hate the first one enough to cover it, but we'll see. I think this one is just too green, and it probably doesn't help that it's directly on the black paint, but whatever. This next one is going to be kind of a two-step process, I think. So I'm going to drag up a little bit more of this lighter pink. I'm going to do a 2 millimeter, and then I'm going to go down to a 1.5, and I'm going to walk them like that. I think that's going to look really cool. It's going to catch the eye. So I will go around and do the big dot first, and I'm kind of trying to keep it in the same place, but I can already tell this dot's a little smaller, so you know what? It just doesn't have to be perfect. All right, so now I'm going to switch tools. Yeah, I think that's going to look really cool. Sometimes I see artists that will dip their paint into this dot, and I have not found success with that using Deco Art. I think if you use a heavier body paint, or if you put slow dry additive or something, I think you could maybe get there, but I think just with straight Deco Art and Flow Aid, it just dries too fast. These are getting a little muddy, but it's still cute. Make sure you're cleaning your tool off pretty frequently, because when they start to get too big, they run together. Yeah, anyway, I think that looks pretty cool. Now I gotta figure out what I want to do in this little spot. So I'm gonna think on that for a while. I think I have a plan, maybe, possibly. Going back in with my pink. I'm just gonna do a couple of little dots here. Like it's an extension of this walking the dots. I wish I could fit one more in there, but I don't think I can on most of them. Let's see how it looks when we do a couple. Yeah, I want that little bit of negative space. I'm weird. I don't like my I don't like my elements to touch each other. It's just a weird rule of mine. Another weird rule of mine. What are your weird rules about when you're painting? I'm trying to break out of those. Okay, that looks cute. I like it a lot. And now I got to figure out what I'm going to put here. So I could do dot, dot, and then like a trail of dots here. That's one idea. I want to consider what this little triangle is going to happen. If I can do something there. So this is going to take some thought. I think I have a plan, but concerned about my ability to execute it. So I kind of want to make a Y here because I think that'll fit between all of these, you know, because they're not perfectly aligned. And I'm going to break one of my rules, which is that I don't want any of my elements to touch each other. And I think that's, like, that one's a little sad, but let's try another one. So if I do the left side, and then go in with the right, I don't know, this isn't really going to work on all of them because I have a different amount of space in all of them. So if I go and I do all of the right side, wait for it to dry because I can't drag wet paint through half wet paint. I gotta think about this. Well, I still don't know what I'm gonna do, but I did really dislike that, so I just painted over the ones that I couldn't wipe off. But I think logically I have to put dots here rather than lines just because my level of skill is not quite as good as some people. So that looks like a pretty decent thing. And I'm gonna go down to my peach color, I think. Just see how that looks. Yeah, I think I like that. That's probably gonna be pretty easy. And it might be boring, but what are you gonna do? Yeah, I think I like that. Got that finished, so now I'm thinking about this space here. And I think I want to try to do like a little fan shape here. Let's see what we can come up with. And I'm gonna do that in pink because I know I can top dot over it. So if I did something like that, and then I switch to a smaller size, did something like that. Well, that's cute. Sort of looks like a carrot now, but not in a bad or weird way. I think that's cute. I'm gonna think on that for a minute. All right, I'm gonna do the center swoosh first, and I'm trying to anticipate any problems I'm going to run into because some of these are offset. So see, this one is offset a little bit. It's not quite centered. So I need to be careful and try to judge for that. So I'm going to be on the lookout for those as I go here. But for the moment, I'll just do this center one. Because I also, it's a different tool, so it only makes sense that I do the middle one first. And that's getting a little bit wider at the tail than I would like it, but I'm not gonna get in too much of a twist about it. Okay, so I've got that center line done, and now I'm gonna switch tools to my very smallest stylus set. And I am having trouble. I don't know what's wrong, but the first one, the lines came out so cute. And now, not as cute, but I'm just gonna deal with it. It's just a rock, people. Nothing to get in a twist over. All right, I've got all those done, and now I'm gonna work on this little triangle shape here. And I think what I'm gonna do is do a kind of a larger center dot, and I'm gonna use my orange. So I'll do a center dot, and then I'll take a really, really small tool and do like micro dots. That is gonna be super cute. Oh my gosh, they're so tiny, I love them. Okay, that's fun. So obviously I'll do, and this is, I'm using a 2mm dotting rod. So I'm just gonna try to keep these centered in that triangle, but again, I've always gotta kind of correct my errors from before. So, you know, this is a time where I can kind of adjust what I'm doing. Got those done. And I'm using the 0.5mm size of the Happy Dotting tool. And I use this end for swooshing a lot, but not so much for dotting because they are just so itty bitty and tiny. And I'll just go through, and again, I'm gonna use this opportunity to square things off. You know, I want this to be basically a Y shape. And where you orient these side dots will make a difference to the overall look of the project. You know, like if they're off, it just looks funny. I think I'm gonna do more tiny dots, and I'm gonna do that right off of this. So it runs right into there. Let's see how that looks. I'm gonna use my orange again. And there isn't gonna be room in all of these, but just gotta do your best. Yeah, I think that's okay. I wish it married into the top one a little bit better, or I had not done this bottom one and like trailed into it, but whatever. It's not a big deal. It's just a rock. So I'm gonna have to try to kind of squeeze these in there on the real skinny spaces. Yeah, I just really wish that married together a little better. Yeah, I think I can work with that. Now that I've finished that, I'm gonna work down here a little bit more, and I think I want to try to drag some of the darker pinks or magenta down to here. So that's my lightest pink. I'm gonna go straight to magenta and let's see how that looks. And I'm gonna use my 1mm tool. Okay, I think I like that. It's probably gonna be hard for you to see. It's difficult to see on the, once I get this far down on the stone. Yeah, I think I like that. So I'm gonna go around and do the right side of all of them and come back. Okay, I've got that side done, and now I'm gonna flip over and do the other side. And as this is drying, it's drying much darker than it is when it's wet. So I hope I didn't overdo it, but I guess we'll just have to see. While I'm looking at this thing, I'm seeing that it's like very stripy, like I have this kind of black stripe on here with negative space, which isn't unattractive, I don't think, but just not, I don't know. I like things to kind of blend together a little bit more. So I'll see if I can somehow account for that. Okay, in an attempt to get rid of some of these kind of rings around the negative space, I don't know how else to describe them. Like, this is too choppy, like magenta, dragon fruit. And usually I like to paint something like this where everything sort of melds together. And I just can't really accomplish that, you know, when I'm missing the whole center, like I can't really build it out. So that's why it's feeling choppy to me. It's just not my typical work. It's probably looks great to a lot of people, but I think I'm gonna do, where did it go? I'm gonna do these very tiny dots here. Kind of around that. Let's see if we can get closer. So I'm going to do these, and I'm going to go back to the same, the 0.5mm tool from Heavy Dotting Company. And I'm just going to kind of continue on this line out from this little triangle guy that I was working on. Yeah, I think I like that. And there's a different amount of space in each one, but I think it's gonna be pretty easy to work with. So I'm gonna do the right side first because I can already tell that I don't do as good a job if I do both sides. You can get a really different result with this tool depending on how you hold it. You get a very, very small dots if you hold it, you know, perpendicular to the stone. But if you're if you're holding it at an angle, you can end up with larger dots, but they can also kind of turn flat. So if you're having trouble and these just aren't looking how you want them to look, try uprighting your pen so that, or your stylus, so that you're just using the tip. The reason for that is that there isn't a ball on this one at all. This one has a ball on it. Let me see if I can clean that off so you can see better. And even that tiny difference, you know, the paint can kind of go anywhere with this, whereas on this end, you know, it's got something to hang on to. So I hope that makes sense. And now I'm flipping around, and so I can do the other side. And I am very apt, especially from this direction, to get my dots to be kind of sideways or too big. It's just the way I hold my tool. I'm not sure if you can see that, but those are a little bit wonky. Okay, trying to work into these little tiny spaces here, and I'm going to take my 1mm and I'm just going to put these two cute orange dots in there. Adorable. Let's try a close-up. It kind of looks like a little dragonfly or something. All right, as you can probably tell, I am just going to keep top dotting, and then I'll put in some gold. And I'm going to work next on these big coral dots right now and dot them with the yellowy orange. And I really like how this is looking. So I'm going to go with size 5. And also really good news is because I took that extra second to smooth out these big dots when they were kind of lumpy, and then I did it again with the second layer. These are really nice and smooth, which is much nicer to paint on than something that dries with mounds. That's no fun at all. It's hard to paint over those. Oh, that's the wrong color. Okay, I really like that. And I'm gonna follow that same technique. I think from the angle of the camera, you can see that it's kind of a mound right now. Just gonna go in there, spread that around a little bit. And it's a little bit better. Hopefully it'll flatten out a little bit more as it's drying. And I'll just go through and do all of these. All right, I thought I was done, but I needed some gold paint in a cone for my next project. So I am going to practice this because I'm not great at it. And it does take kind of a lot of practice, as you can see, because nothing's coming out. Oh, I got the tiniest dot you've ever seen. it seems like the paint starts to dry on the end of the cone and it kind of changes the shape of the dots. And that's been my biggest struggle with it. So we'll see how I do this time. That went okay, and I am a little bit better having done that. And now I'm just going to practice a little bit more by putting like the teeniest, tiniest dot. And this paint is Arteza. And I did not thin this at all. That was one thing I was really having trouble with, and it's that the paint was not thick enough. So if you're having trouble, give that a try. All right, I'm all finished with it. And I ended up going back over the dots that I made with the cone with just a little bit of 320 grit sandpaper because they had these weird peaks on them that were kind of sharp and I didn't like it. So I don't think Arteza straight out of the tube is right for that either. I think it's got to be a little bit thinner, but that sounds like a big pain too. So onward. I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a great day.